Chapter 1. The Forgotten Map. Lara walked slowly down the street, her eyes searching for something interesting. It was a sunny Saturday, and she had no plans. Suddenly she saw an old bookshop. It looked very old and a bit mysterious. This could be fun, she thought, and went inside. The bookshop was quiet and smelled like old books. Lara loved this smell. She walked between tall shelves full of books. There were books everywhere. Some were new, but many were old and had interesting covers. Then something caught her eye. It was a big old book with a faded green cover. She pulled it out carefully. The book was heavy in her hands. She opened it and saw pictures of mountains, rivers, and forests. It was a book about adventures around the world. As she turned the pages, something fell out of the book. It was a map. The map looked very old. It was yellow and had many lines and drawings. Lara's heart started to beat faster. Is this a treasure map? She wondered. She looked around. The shop was still quiet. The shopkeeper, an old man with glasses, was reading a newspaper at the counter. He didn't see her. Lara opened the map and saw drawings of a jungle, a river, and a mark that looked like an X. X marks the spot, she thought. Like in pirate stories. She felt excited. This was just like an adventure book. But where was this place? She looked closely at the map. There were no names, only pictures. Then she saw a small drawing of a mountain. She knew this mountain. It was not far from her town. This is a real adventure map, Lara whispered to herself. She wanted to go there and find what was hidden at the X. But she was also a bit scared. What if it was dangerous? What if she got lost? She thought for a moment. Then she decided she was going to follow the map. She would be careful and plan everything well. She would tell her friend, Tom, about it. He loved adventures too. They could go together. Lara went to the counter with the book and the map. How much for this book? She asked the shopkeeper. The old man looked at the book and then at Lara. He smiled a little. For you, $5. It's an old book, but maybe it can still take someone on an adventure. Lara smiled back. I think it will, she said. She paid for the book and left the shop with the map safely inside. As she walked home, her mind was full of ideas. She was going on a real adventure. She couldn't wait to tell Tom and start planning. She knew this was going to be an amazing journey, and she was ready for it. The forgotten map was not forgotten anymore. It was the start of Lara's great adventure. Lara sat at her desk, staring at the old map. She had spread it out in front of her. The map was full of mysterious symbols and a clear path leading through a jungle to an X. What could be there? She wondered. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the clock. Lara's heart was full of excitement and a little fear. She had never done anything like this before. It was like a story from a book, but it was real. She thought about her normal days. They were usually simple and predictable. She went to school, did her homework, and sometimes met with her friends. But this map promised something different, a real adventure. It was a chance to find something new and exciting. But she also had doubts. What if it's too dangerous, she thought. What if I can't find anything? The map was very old. Maybe there was nothing at the X. Or maybe it was just a story. Then she remembered her grandmother's words. Life is a big adventure, but you have to be brave to enjoy it. Her grandmother loved to travel and explore new places. She always told Lara stories about her trips. Lara loved these stories. I want my own stories, Lara said to herself. She wanted to be brave like her grandmother. She wanted to see new places and find hidden treasures. She made her decision. She was going to follow the map. She would be careful and smart. She would plan everything well. And she would not go alone. She picked up her phone and called her best friend, Tom. "Tom, I found something amazing," she said. "It's a real adventure, and I want you to come with me." Tom was surprised. "An adventure? What do you mean?" Lara told him about the bookshop, the old book, and the map. She explained her plan to follow the map and find what was at the X. Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This sounds crazy, Lara, but also really exciting. I'm in. Let's do it." Lara smiled. She was happy that Tom was coming with her. They were a great team. They both loved exploring and weren't afraid of challenges. They decided to meet the next day to plan their trip. They needed to know more about the jungle and how to get there. They needed to prepare for everything. That night, Lara couldn't sleep well. She was too excited. She kept thinking about the map and what they might find. She imagined walking through the jungle, finding clues, and finally discovering the treasure. She knew it wouldn't be easy. There could be difficult paths, wild animals, and other challenges. But she was ready. She felt brave and curious. This was her chance to have a real adventure, and she was going to take it. Lara's journey was about to begin. Chapter 2. Journey begins. The next morning, Lara woke up early. She was full of energy and ready to start preparing for her big adventure. She knew she had to pack smartly. She opened her backpack and started thinking about what to take. First, she put in a map, not just the old treasure map, but also a modern map of the area. It was important to know where she was going. Then she added a compass. The compass would help her find directions in the jungle. Next, Lara thought about safety. She put a small first aid kit in her backpack. It had band-aids, some medicine, and a bottle of antiseptic. She also took a flashlight with extra batteries. The jungle can be very dark, she thought. She knew they would walk a lot, so she packed a pair of strong, comfortable shoes. She also put in a raincoat. The weather can change quickly in the jungle, she remembered reading in a book. Lara also packed some food and water. She chose things that were easy to carry and would not spoil. She put in some sandwiches, apples, nuts, and a few bottles of water. She also took a small cooking pot and a spoon. We might need to cook something, she thought. Then she remembered something important. We need a tent, she said to herself. She found an old tent in the garage. It was small, but enough for 2 people. She checked it carefully and then added it to her things. She looked at her backpack. It was almost full, but she needed a few more things. She added a notebook and a pen to write down what we find, she thought. She also took her camera. She wanted to take photos of their adventure. Finally, she packed some extra clothes. She chose clothes that were light but warm. The nights could be cold in the jungle. She also took a hat to protect her from the sun. Lara looked at her backpack. It was ready. She felt proud and a bit nervous. She had never packed for an adventure like this before, but she thought she had everything important. Just then, her phone rang. It was Tom. "I'm ready," he said. "I've got my backpack, and I'm bringing a rope and some extra food." "Great," said Lara. "I've got everything too. Let's meet in 1 hour at the bus station." After the call, Lara ate a quick breakfast. She was too excited to eat much. She checked her backpack again. She wanted to make sure she didn't forget anything. She left her house, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. She was going on a real adventure, just like in the books she loved. She was going to follow a mysterious map into the jungle. She didn't know what they would find, but she was ready to discover it. As she walked to the bus station, Lara felt like a true adventurer. She was ready for the challenges ahead. She couldn't wait to see what the jungle had for her and Tom. Their journey was about to begin. Lara arrived at the bus station with her backpack. She saw Tom waiting for her. He also had a big backpack. They smiled at each other. "Are you ready?" asked Lara. "Yes. Let's go find a treasure," said Tom. They got on the bus. It was an old bus, but it looked strong. The bus started moving, and their journey began. Lara looked out of the window. She saw the city, then small towns, and then just green fields and trees. After a few hours, they arrived at a small village near the jungle. They got off the bus. The village was quiet and small. There were a few houses, a shop, and a small cafe. They decided to have a quick lunch in the cafe. While eating, Lara looked at the map again. "We need to find the right path into the jungle," she said. After lunch, they started walking. They followed the map, looking for the beginning of the path. The sun was hot, and the backpacks felt heavy, but they were excited. Suddenly they heard a voice. "Are you looking for the jungle path?" They turned and saw a man. He was tall and looked strong. He had a hat and a big bag. "Yes, we are," said Lara. "Do you know where it is?" The man smiled. "I know this jungle very well. I'm a guide. My name is Carlos." He pointed to a narrow path. "This is the way, but the jungle can be dangerous. You should be careful." Lara and Tom looked at each other. They had not thought about finding a guide, but Carlos seemed nice and helpful. "Would you come with us?" asked Tom. "We can pay you." Carlos thought for a moment. "Okay, I can take you. But we must be careful and respect the jungle." They agreed and started walking on the path. Carlos led the way. He showed them different plants and told them about the jungle. He knew a lot. As they walked, the jungle got thicker. There were big trees and many sounds. It was like a different world. Lara felt excited but also a bit scared. The jungle was beautiful but wild. Carlos stopped. "We will camp here tonight," he said. They were in a small clearing. The sun was going down, and it was getting dark. They set up the tent and made a small fire. Carlos cooked some food. It was simple but good. They talked about their adventure. Carlos listened and smiled. "You are brave," he said, "but remember, the jungle has its own rules." That night, Lara lay in her tent, listening to the sounds of the jungle. It was a bit scary, but also amazing. She was really in the jungle, on her way to find a treasure. She felt like a real adventurer. She thought about the next day. She wondered what they would find. She hoped they were going in the right direction. She trusted Carlos, but the jungle was a big place. Lara fell asleep, dreaming of hidden treasures and unknown paths. Her adventure had just started, and she was ready for whatever was coming. Chapter 3. Into the jungle. Early in the morning, Lara, Tom, and Carlos started walking again. The sun was just rising, and the jungle was waking up. The air was fresh and smelled like wet leaves and earth. Lara took a deep breath. "It smells so different from the city," she thought. As they walked deeper into the jungle, the sounds around them changed. They could hear birds singing and the leaves rustling in the wind. Sometimes they heard a strange noise and stopped to listen. "What's that sound?" Lara would ask. "It's just a monkey or a small animal," Carlos would explain. The jungle was full of colors. The trees were tall with green leaves. Flowers of different colors grew on the ground and in the trees. Lara saw red, yellow, and even blue flowers. The sunlight came through the leaves, making patterns on the ground. It was like a painting. They walked on a narrow path. The ground was soft and a bit wet. Lara could feel the mud under her shoes. Sometimes her foot would sink a little, and she had to pull it out. The air was warm and humid. Lara felt sweat on her forehead, but she didn't mind. She was too excited to see everything. Carlos showed them different plants. "This plant is good for medicine," he said, pointing to a small plant with yellow flowers. "And this one can be used for food." He showed them a plant with big leaves. They also tasted some wild fruits. Carlos picked small, red berries from a bush. "They are safe to eat," he said. Lara tried one. It was sweet and juicy. "It's delicious," she said. As they walked, they felt the jungle around them. It was alive and full of surprises. Lara touched the leaves and the rough bark of the trees. She felt small branches breaking under her feet. The jungle was not quiet, but it was peaceful. At noon they stopped to rest. They were near a small river. The water was clear, and they could see fish swimming. The sound of the water was relaxing. They ate their lunch and enjoyed the beautiful view. Lara looked around. She was amazed by the jungle. It was more beautiful and exciting than she had imagined. She saw a butterfly with bright wings. She watched it fly away into the trees. "This is amazing," she said to Tom and Carlos. "I'm so happy we are here." Tom smiled. "Me too. It's like a different world." Carlos nodded. "The jungle is special, but remember, we must always be careful. It can be dangerous." They knew Carlos was right. They were careful where they walked and what they touched. But they were not afraid. They were on an adventure, and they were ready for whatever the jungle had for them. In the afternoon they continued walking. The jungle was full of mysteries and wonders. Lara was excited to see more. She felt like a true explorer, ready to discover new things. As the afternoon turned into evening, the jungle around Lara, Tom, and Carlos seemed to change. New sounds filled the air. Lara heard a whoosh as a bird flew above them. Then a crack made her jump. It was just a branch breaking under the weight of a small animal. "Wow, the jungle is full of sounds," Lara said. Every noise was like a new surprise. Some were loud, and others were very soft. They kept walking, and suddenly Lara heard a strange croak-croak. She looked around. "What's that?" she asked. Carlos smiled and pointed to a frog sitting on a leaf. The frog was green and looked almost like the leaf. "It's just a frog," Carlos explained. They liked to talk in the evening. As it got darker, they heard a buzz-buzz sound. "Mosquitoes," Tom said, waving his hand around his face. They all put on some mosquito repellent to keep the bugs away. Then a very loud hoot-hoot sound made them all stop. "What was that?" asked Lara, a little scared. "It's an owl," Carlos said. "They come out at night." The jungle was full of life, and every creature had its own sound. Lara tried to listen and guess what each sound was. There was a rustle-rustle in the leaves and a drip-drip from a nearby stream. The sounds made the jungle feel alive. They found a place to camp for the night. Carlos started a fire, and the crackle of the firewood was comforting. They ate their dinner and listened to sounds of the night. Lara was amazed. She had never heard so many different sounds before. The jungle is like a big orchestra, she thought. Every animal and insect was playing its part. Before going to sleep, they sat around the fire. The chirp-chirp of crickets was all around them. Lara felt tired, but she was also excited. She was really in the jungle, living a real adventure. That night, Lara lay in her tent listening to the sounds. Some were familiar now, but others were still a mystery. She felt a little afraid, but also safe. The sounds of the jungle were like music. They were loud, then soft, then loud again. Lara thought about the day. She had seen and heard so many new things. She felt happy and curious. What would they find tomorrow? Would they get closer to the treasure? She closed her eyes and let the sounds of the jungle take her to sleep. Tomorrow, another day of adventure was waiting for her, and she was ready for it. Lara, Tom, and Carlos stood at the edge of the jungle. It was a world of green stretching out in front of them. "It's so big," whispered Lara, looking at the tall trees and thick bushes. As they stepped into the jungle, Lara felt the change. The air was warmer and smelled of wet earth and plants. The ground under her feet was soft and a bit muddy. She could hear birds singing high in the trees and insects buzzing around. The light in the jungle was different. Sunbeams broke through the leaves, making patterns on the ground. Everything was green with patches of sunlight. Lara felt like she was in a giant green room with a leafy roof. Carlos led the way. He showed them how to look for safe paths and avoid dangerous plants. "Some plants here can hurt you," he said, pointing to a plant with sharp thorns. They walked slowly, looking at everything. Lara saw flowers she had never seen before. They were bright and colorful. She touched the petals gently. They were soft and delicate. The sounds of the jungle were everywhere. There was a rustling in the leaves, and Lara wondered what animal was moving there. She heard a loud squawk and saw a colorful bird fly by. Then Lara felt a raindrop on her hand. Soon it started to rain lightly. The smell of the rain on the earth was strong and fresh. She put on her raincoat, listening to the sound of raindrops on the leaves. It was like music. As they walked deeper into the jungle, Lara felt small and amazed. The trees were so tall, and the jungle was so full of life. She could taste the moisture in the air. It was a bit humid, but felt good. Tom found a small stream. The water was clear and cool. They stopped to drink. The water tasted fresh, better than any water Lara had drunk before. Carlos found a place for them to rest. They sat down and ate some of their food. Lara was hungry after the walk. The apple she ate was crunchy and sweet. Sitting in the jungle, Lara felt excited and happy. She was here, in the middle of this beautiful wild place. She closed her eyes and listened to the sounds, smelled the air, and felt the ground under her. She wanted to remember everything. "This is amazing," she said to Tom and Carlos. "I've never seen a place like this." Tom nodded. "It's like another world." Carlos smiled. "Welcome to the jungle. It's a special place." Lara knew they were only at the start of their adventure. There was so much more to see and explore. She couldn't wait to see what the jungle had to show them. She felt brave and ready for anything. As they continued walking, Lara felt the excitement of the adventure. She was in the jungle on a quest to find a hidden treasure. She didn't know what they would find, but she was ready to discover all the secrets of the jungle. As the afternoon sun filtered through the dense jungle canopy, Lara, Tom, and Carlos continued their trek. The jungle was alive with sounds, each one a new and exciting mystery to Lara. A sudden snap made Lara jump. She turned around quickly. "It's okay," Carlos said with a smile. "Just a twig breaking under an animal's foot." Lara laughed at her own fear, feeling a thrill of adventure. They kept walking, and the jungle sounds seemed to grow louder. A deep coo-coo-coo echoed from somewhere far away. "What's that?" Lara asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "A dove," Carlos answered, pointing towards a distant tree. The deeper they went, the more the jungle seemed to talk to them. A buzz filled the air around Lara's head. She swatted at it. "Just a fly," she said, a little annoyed. Then a series of loud craw-craw sounds came from above. Lara looked up and saw a large bird with bright feathers. "That's a macaw," Carlos explained, and Lara marveled at its beauty. As the sun began to set, the jungle changed again. The noises became different, more mysterious. A croak-croak came from a nearby pond, and Lara guessed it was a frog. "You're right," Carlos confirmed. The air grew cooler, and the sky began to darken. Now there were new nighttime sounds. A soft whoosh-whoosh sound made Lara stop. "What is that?" she whispered. "It's an owl, flying," Carlos replied, looking into the trees. They set up camp in a small clearing. The fire they made crackled and popped, adding its own voice to the jungle's nighttime chorus. As they sat around the fire, a chirp-chirp sound surrounded them. "Crickets," Tom said, looking relaxed. Lara lay in her tent later, listening to the symphony of night sounds in the jungle. A distant howl made her shiver. "It's just a howler monkey," she remembered Carlos saying. Every sound was a reminder that she was in a wild and wonderful place, full of life and mystery. She felt a mix of excitement and a little bit of fear, but mostly Lara felt alive. She was here, in the heart of the jungle, living a real adventure. She thought about the map and the treasure. What would they find? Would the sounds guide them? Lara closed her eyes, the jungle's lullaby easing her into sleep. Tomorrow was another day of adventure, and she was eager to see what it would bring. Chapter 4. River Crossing. The next morning, after a breakfast of sandwiches and fruit, Lara, Tom, and Carlos packed up their camp and continued their journey. The jungle was bright and full of life. Birds were singing, and the sun shone through the trees. After walking for a couple of hours, they heard the sound of running water. "A river," Carlos said. Soon they saw it. The river was wide and flowed fast. On the other side was the path they needed to take. But there was a problem. The only way to cross the river was an old bridge. It looked very old and not very strong. The bridge was made of wood and ropes, and it swung a little in the wind. Lara looked at the bridge. She felt scared. She had never crossed a bridge like this. It looked dangerous. "Do we have to cross here?" she asked Carlos. Carlos nodded. "Yes, this is the only way. But we must be careful. The bridge is old." Tom looked excited. "It's like in the movies," he said. But Lara didn't feel excited. She felt worried. Carlos went first to show them it was safe. He walked slowly and carefully. The bridge moved a little under his weight, but it held. "Come on," he called from the other side. "Just walk slowly and don't look down." Tom went next. He walked slowly, holding on to the ropes. He made it to the other side safely. Now it was Lara's turn. She stepped onto the bridge. It moved under her feet, and she felt scared. She wanted to go back, but she knew she couldn't. She had to cross the bridge to continue their adventure. Lara took a deep breath. She looked straight ahead, not down at the river. She started walking slowly. The bridge wobbled and creaked under her. She held onto the ropes tightly. "Take your time," Carlos called. "You're doing well." Lara kept walking. With each step, she felt a little braver. She thought about the treasure and their adventure. She didn't want to give up. Finally, she reached the other side. She stepped off the bridge and felt proud. She had done it. She had crossed the scary bridge. Tom and Carlos smiled at her. "Good job," Tom said. "You were brave." Lara smiled back. She felt happy and strong. She'd faced her fear and crossed the bridge. They continued their journey, walking along the path. Lara felt more confident now. She had crossed a wobbly bridge. She felt like she could do anything. The jungle was full of challenges, but Lara was ready for them. She was on an adventure, and she was brave. She couldn't wait to see what was next. Lara stood at the start of the wobbly bridge. It looked even more frightening up close. She watched as Carlos and Tom made their way across. The bridge swayed with every step they took. "I must do this," Lara thought. "I can't give up now." She took a deep breath and put her first foot on the bridge. The wooden planks creaked under her weight. She held onto the rope tightly with her hands. The river below was flowing fast. It made a loud whoosh sound. Lara tried not to look at it. She focused on the other side of the bridge. "Take it slow, Lara. You're doing great," Tom called from the other side. His voice was encouraging. Lara took another step, then another. With each step, the bridge swayed and made creaking sounds. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept going. "Just a few more steps," she told herself. Halfway across, the bridge started to sway more. Lara felt a wave of fear. She stopped and held the rope tighter. "I can't fall," she thought. She closed her eyes for a moment and took another deep breath. "You're almost there, Lara. You're very brave," Carlos shouted. His voice gave her strength. Lara opened her eyes and started to move again. Step by step, she moved closer to the other side. She started to feel more confident. "I can do this," she thought. Finally, Lara reached the end of the bridge. Her feet touched solid ground. She could cross the wobbly bridge. She felt a huge sense of relief and pride. She had faced her fear and won. Tom and Carlos were smiling at her. "You were amazing," Tom said. Carlos nodded. "Not many people can cross that bridge without fear. You are very brave." Lara smiled back. She felt stronger now. This adventure was making her braver and stronger. They took a short break to rest. Lara looked back at the bridge. It didn't look so scary now. She felt like she could do anything. After the break, they continued their journey. The path led them deeper into the jungle. Lara felt excited about what was ahead. She was ready for more challenges. She knew she could face them. The sun was setting, and the jungle was changing again. New sounds and smells filled the air. Lara felt alive and part of this wild, beautiful place. As they walked, Lara thought about the treasure. What would they find? She didn't know, but she was sure it would be something amazing. She was on an adventure, and she was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 5. Nightfall. As the evening approached, Lara, Tom, and Carlos found a nice place to camp. It was a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. Carlos started a fire. The flames crackled and danced, casting a warm glow around them. They sat close to the fire, enjoying its warmth. After dinner, they all sat quietly for a while, listening to the sounds of the jungle at night. The air was filled with the chirping of crickets and the occasional call of a distant animal. Carlos, who had been quiet most of the evening, suddenly spoke. "Do you want to hear some stories about the jungle?" he asked. Lara and Tom nodded eagerly. They loved stories. Carlos leaned closer to the fire. His face looked mysterious in the flickering light. "This jungle is full of secrets," he began. "There are stories of hidden treasures, lost cities, and ancient mysteries." Lara and Tom listened with wide eyes. Carlos told them about a lost city made of gold that was hidden deep in the jungle. Many adventurers had tried to find it, but no one ever did. He also told them about the animals of the jungle. He spoke of the clever monkeys, the silent jaguars, and the colorful birds. His stories made the animals seem like magical creatures. Then Carlos told a scary story about a giant snake that lived in the river. It was so big that it could wrap around a big tree. Lara shivered a little. The fire crackled, and the shadows danced around them. The jungle felt even more mysterious and wild. After the stories, they all sat quietly, thinking about the wonders and dangers of the jungle. The fire was now just glowing embers. The night was dark, but the stars were bright above them. Lara felt a mix of fear and excitement. The jungle was more amazing and mysterious than she had ever imagined. She thought about their adventure and the treasure they were looking for. What if it was part of the jungle's secrets? Finally, Carlos stood up. "It's time to sleep," he said. "We have a long day tomorrow." They all went to their tents. Lara lay in her tent, thinking about the stories. She fell asleep to the sounds of the jungle, dreaming of lost cities and hidden treasures. Lara lay in her tent, wrapped in her sleeping bag. The sounds of the jungle at night were both exciting and a little scary. She could hear the leaves rustling and the distant sound of water from the river they had crossed. As she tried to sleep, Lara's mind was full of Carlos's stories. She imagined the lost city of gold and the giant snake. She wondered what other secrets the jungle might hold. Suddenly, a new sound caught her attention. It was a soft hoo-hoo sound. An owl, she thought. She remembered Carlos telling them that owls were common in the jungle at night. She felt a little less scared, knowing what the sound was. Then she heard a different sound. It was a low growl. Lara's heart beat faster. What was that? She wondered. She remembered Carlos's story about the jaguars. They were beautiful but also dangerous. She listened carefully. The growl didn't come again. Instead, she heard a soft pitter-patter on the leaves. Maybe it's just a small animal, she thought. The jungle was full of life, and not all of it was big or scary. As she lay there, Lara heard more sounds. There was a chirp-chirp that she guessed was a cricket. Then there was a strange click-click sound. She didn't know what it was, but it was interesting. Lara felt braver as she listened to the sounds. She realized the jungle was like a big house at night, with all its inhabitants awake and busy. She felt like she was part of it, listening to its nighttime song. She also heard the sound of wings flapping. Bats, she thought. Carlos had told them that bats were very important in the jungle. They helped to spread seeds and control insects. Lara felt a new sense of wonder about the jungle. It was full of different animals, each with its own life. She felt lucky to be here, experiencing all this. Eventually, the sounds of the jungle became a gentle background noise. Lara felt her eyes getting heavy. She yawned and snuggled deeper into her sleeping bag. As she drifted off to sleep, Lara thought about the adventure ahead. She was excited to continue their journey. She wanted to see more of the jungle and maybe find the treasure. That night, Lara dreamed of walking through the jungle. In her dream, she saw all the animals Carlos had talked about. She heard the sounds of the jungle, and they were not scary anymore. They were like music. In her dream, Lara felt like she was part of the jungle. She was an adventurer, brave and curious. She was ready to discover all the secrets the jungle had to offer. Chapter 6. The Hidden Path. As they continued their journey through the jungle, Lara, Tom, and Carlos stopped for a rest near a small, flowing stream. The sound of the water was calming, and the shade of the trees provided a cool escape from the sun. While they were eating their lunch, Carlos looked at them with a twinkle in his eye. "Do you want to hear an old legend of the jungle?" he asked. Lara and Tom nodded eagerly. They loved the stories Carlos told. They made their adventure feel even more special. Carlos began, "Long ago, there was an ancient civilization that lived in this jungle. They built a city of gold and precious stones. But when invaders came looking for the city, the people hid their treasure." Lara and Tom listened, fascinated. Carlos continued, "The legend says they made a hidden path to protect the treasure. Only those who are brave and true of heart can find it." Lara's eyes widened. "Is that true?" she asked. Carlos smiled. "Many believe it's just a story, but some say the path and the treasure are still here, hidden in the jungle." Tom looked excited. "Are there any clues about where this path is?" he asked. Carlos nodded. "The legend speaks of a giant stone shaped like a jaguar near the river. It is said that the path starts there." Lara thought about the map they were following. Could our map lead to the same treasure? She wondered aloud. "It's possible," Carlos said. "Many have searched for the treasure, but no one has ever found it." Lara felt a rush of excitement. Their adventure was turning into a real treasure hunt. She looked at Tom, who was smiling broadly. They both felt more determined than ever to find the treasure. Carlos finished his story, and they all sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the legend. Then they packed up their things and continued walking. Lara kept thinking about the giant stone jaguar. She wondered if they would find it. As they walked, the jungle seemed even more mysterious and magical. Lara imagined the ancient civilization and their hidden treasure. She looked around, half expecting to see signs of the old city. The afternoon passed quickly, and they didn't find the stone jaguar. But Lara wasn't disappointed. She knew they were getting closer to something big. She could feel it. That evening, they set up camp again. Lara lay in her tent, thinking about the legend. She was excited and a little nervous. What if they really found the treasure? What would it be like? She fell asleep with images of gold and jewels in her mind. The legend had given their adventure a new purpose. They were not just exploring the jungle, they were on a quest to find a lost treasure. And Lara was ready for whatever the jungle had to show them. The next morning, Lara, Tom, and Carlos started early. They were excited and hopeful. Today they might find the hidden path from the legend. The jungle seemed even more alive with the possibility of adventure. They walked for hours, following the map and looking for the giant stone jaguar Carlos had mentioned. The sun was high in the sky, and the air was hot and humid. They were all sweating and tired, but they didn't want to stop. Then, as they walked along the river, Tom shouted, "Look!" He was pointing at something in the distance. They hurried over and saw a large stone shaped like a jaguar. It was covered in moss and vines, but it was definitely a jaguar. "This must be it," Lara exclaimed. They all felt a rush of excitement. This was the clue from the legend. They were on the right track. Carlos examined the stone jagger. "The legend says the path is hidden near here," he said. They started to look around, searching for any signs of a path. After a while, Lara saw something. It was a narrow opening in the bushes. It was hard to see, but it looked like it could be a path. "Here," she called. Tom and Carlos came over. Carlos looked at the opening. "This could be it," he said, "but we must be careful. It might be dangerous." They decided to go through the opening. Lara went first, pushing the branches away. The path was narrow and overgrown. They had to walk in a line, one after the other. As they walked, the path became clearer. It was definitely a path, but it looked like no one had used it for a long time. There were vines and plants everywhere, and they had to be careful not to trip. Lara felt like a real explorer. They were on a hidden path that might lead to an ancient treasure. It was just like in her dreams. The path led them deeper into the jungle. The trees were taller, and the sounds of the jungle were all around them. Lara felt small in this big, wild place, but she'd also felt brave and excited. After walking for what seemed like hours, the path opened up into a small clearing. They stopped to rest and drink some water. Carlos looked around. "We are far from the usual paths now," he said. "We must be careful and stick together." Lara looked at the map and then at the jungle around them. They were in a part of the jungle she had never seen before. It was exciting but a little scary. But Lara was not afraid. She was on an adventure, and she had her friends with her. Together, they would find the treasure. She was sure of it. They continued on the hidden path, ready for whatever they would find. The legend was real, and they were part of it now. Chapter 7. Traps and Treasures. Lara, Tom, and Carlos walked carefully along the hidden path. The jungle around them was thick and full of mystery. After some time they came to a strange-looking area. The ground was covered with leaves, but Carlos stopped them with a hand. "Be careful," he warned. "This could be an ancient trap." Lara looked at the ground. She saw that some of the leaves were placed in a way that looked unnatural. "How do we get past it?" she asked. Carlos showed them how to find safe places to step. "We must be very careful," he said. "Step exactly where I step." They followed Carlos one by one, stepping carefully on the spots he showed them. Lara felt nervous with each step, but she trusted Carlos. He knew the jungle well. After they passed the first trap, they found another one. This time it was a series of small holes in the ground. Carlos explained that these holes could have sharp sticks inside. They carefully walked around the holes, making sure not to step on any of them. As they continued, Lara felt like she was in a movie. She had never imagined finding real ancient traps in the jungle. It was scary, but also exciting. They came across several more traps. Each one was different. Some were holes, some were nets hidden under leaves, and some were swinging logs that had to be avoided. Lara was amazed at how clever the traps were. They were old but still worked. The people who made these were very smart, she said. Tom nodded. "And they really wanted to protect something," he added. They kept moving, being careful with each step. Lara felt like she was learning a lot from Carlos. He knew how to read the jungle and its secrets. Finally, they came to the end of the traps. They were all relieved. Carlos looked at them and smiled. "Good job," he said. "You were both very brave." Lara felt proud. They had navigated through ancient traps. She felt like a real adventurer now. They took a short break to rest and drink water. Lara looked at the map again. They were getting close to where the X was marked. The treasure could be near. After the break, they started walking again. The jungle seemed even more beautiful and mysterious now. Lara was full of excitement and wonder. She couldn't wait to see what they would find next. The sun was starting to set, and the jungle was changing colours. The sounds of the night began to fill the air. Lara felt tired but also thrilled. They were on an amazing adventure, and she felt ready for whatever was coming next. After successfully navigating through the ancient traps, Lara, Tom, and Carlos continued their journey through the dense jungle. The air was filled with the sounds of birds and distant rustling leaves. The excitement of their adventure was growing with every step they took. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light through the trees, they reached a small clearing. In the center of the clearing, there was an old statue covered in moss and vines. It looked like a guardian of the jungle, standing watch for centuries. Lara approached the statue with curiosity. It was a figure of a warrior carved in stone, with intricate details. She gently brushed away some of the moss, revealing the beautiful craftsmanship. As she looked closer, she noticed something shiny at the base of the statue. "Look at this," she called to Tom and Carlos. They came over and saw that it was a small metallic object partially buried in the ground. Carefully, Lara dug around the object with her hands. It was a small golden amulet, shaped like a sun. The amulet was beautiful, with detailed engravings and sparkling in the remaining sunlight. Carlos examined the amulet and smiled. "This is a sign," he said. "We must be on the right path. This amulet is from the ancient civilization we are searching for." Lara held the amulet in her hand, feeling a connection to the past. It was like holding a piece of history. "This is amazing," she said, her voice full of wonder. "It's a real treasure from the jungle." Tom looked excited. This means the legend might be true. There could be more treasures waiting for us. As they stood in the clearing, the significance of their find sunk in. This was more than just a piece of gold. It was a clue, a part of the puzzle they were trying to solve. Carlos carefully placed the amulet in his bag. "We should keep this safe," he said. "It might help us understand more about the treasure we're looking for." The discovery of the amulet renewed their excitement and determination. They decided to set up camp in the clearing near the statue. As night fell, they sat around the campfire, talking about their find and what it meant. Lara felt a sense of accomplishment. They had found something truly special. She looked at the stars shining brightly above and felt a deep connection to the jungle and its secrets. That night, Lara fell asleep quickly, tired from the day's adventures. She dreamed of ancient civilizations and hidden treasures, feeling more determined than ever to uncover the mysteries of the jungle. Chapter 8. The Maze of Vines. After a night filled with dreams of ancient treasures, Lara, Tom, and Carlos woke up early, eager to continue their adventure. The sun was just rising, casting a soft light through the trees. They packed up their camp and followed the map deeper into the jungle. The path became narrower and the jungle thicker. Soon they found themselves in an area where the trees were covered in thick vines. The vines hung from the trees like long green curtains, and the ground was a tangle of roots and leaves. "This looks like a maze," Tom said, looking around at the twisting vines. Carlos nodded. "Yes, this part of the jungle is known for its dense growth. We must be careful not to get lost." They started to walk through the maze of vines. It was like entering a different world. The vines created walls and tunnels, and the light was dim under their thick cover. Lara felt a mix of excitement and caution. She had never seen anything like this. The vines were so thick in some places that they had to push their way through. As they walked, they had to choose which way to go several times, left or right, under a low arch of vines or through a narrow gap. The path was like a puzzle. Lara tried to remember the way they were going. She didn't want to get lost in this green maze. She looked at the map, but it was hard to tell where they were. The maze of vines wasn't on the map. After a while, Lara noticed something. There were small flowers on some of the vines. They were bright blue and very pretty. "Look at these flowers," she said to Tom and Carlos. Carlos looked at the flowers and then at the path. "These flowers might help us," he said. "In many old stories, flowers and plants are used as signs. Maybe these blue flowers are showing us the way." They decided to follow the path where the blue flowers were more common. It was like following breadcrumbs in a fairy tale. The maze seemed to go on and on. They turned and twisted, pushed through thick vines, and climbed over tangled roots. Lara felt like they were walking in circles, but she trusted Carlos. Then, finally, they saw light ahead. It was the end of the maze. They hurried towards the light and found themselves in another clearing. They had made it through the maze of vines. Lara felt relieved and happy. They had solved the puzzle of the maze. She looked back at the dense green vines. It had been a challenge, but they had done it. Now, in the clearing, they took a short break. Lara felt excited about what they might find next. The treasure was getting closer. She could feel it. They continued their journey, ready for the next challenge. The maze of vines was behind them, but more adventures were waiting ahead. After a short rest in the clearing, Lara, Tom, and Carlos stood up, ready to continue. They were now in the heart of the maze, where the vines grew even thicker and more tangled. The path ahead was not clear. There were several directions they could go, and it was hard to tell which way was right. The maze seemed to be playing tricks on them, with paths that twisted and turned. Lara looked at the map again, but it didn't help. The maze was not marked on it. She felt a bit worried. How will we find our way out? She wondered. Carlos looked around. We need to solve this puzzle, he said. Let's look for clues in the maze. They started to explore the maze, looking carefully at everything. They saw more of the blue flowers Carlos had mentioned before. They also saw some trees with marks on them, like symbols. Lara noticed that some of the symbols matched the ones on their map. These symbols might be a clue, she said. Maybe they are showing us the way. They decided to follow the path with the trees that had symbols. It felt like a game, finding the next symbol and choosing the right path. As they followed the symbols, the maze began to change. The paths became clearer, and the vines were not as thick. They were getting closer to the end of the maze. Then they came to a place where three paths met. There was a large tree in the center with a symbol they had not seen before. It was a circle with lines coming out of it, like the sun. Lara looked at the three paths. She remembered something from the legend Carlos had told them. The sun will show the way, she said. This symbol might be telling us which path to take. They looked at where the sun was in the sky. It was to their right, so they decided to take the path that went to the right. The path was narrow and wound through the vines. They walked carefully, hoping they had chosen correctly. After a while, the path began to widen. The vines grew less thick, and they could see light ahead. They hurried towards the light, and finally they came out of the maze. They had found the way out. Lara felt a rush of happiness. They had solved the puzzle of the maze. Carlos smiled at them. "You did well," he said. "We are one step closer to the treasure." They were now in a part of the jungle that was more open. The trees were not as close together, and the ground was easier to walk on. Lara felt excited and proud. They had faced the challenge of the maze and won. She was ready for the next part of their adventure. The treasure was still waiting for them, and Lara knew they would find it. She was an adventurer, brave and smart, and nothing could stop her. Chapter 9. The Guardian's Challenge. Lara, Tom, and Carlos walked with a sense of accomplishment after solving the maze's puzzle. The jungle around them seemed less intimidating now, filled with the soft light of the afternoon sun. They were discussing their next steps when suddenly a figure appeared on their path. It was a man dressed in traditional clothes, with a feathered headdress. He looked like a guardian from an ancient time. The man stood still, watching them with a serious expression. Lara, Tom, and Carlos stopped walking, surprised by this sudden appearance. "Who are you?" Tom asked cautiously. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at each of them, as if measuring their worth. Then, in a deep voice, he said, "I am the guardian of the path. You have done well to come this far, but the journey ahead is even more challenging." Lara felt a mix of fear and curiosity. She had never met anyone like this before. "What challenge?" she asked. The guardian pointed to a path that led up a steep hill. "To continue your journey, you must pass my challenge. You must prove that you are worthy of the treasure you seek." Lara, Tom, and Carlos looked at each other. They had faced many challenges already, but this was different. This was a test by the guardian of the path. "What is the challenge?" Carlos asked. The guardian looked at the sky, then back at them. "You must reach the top of the hill before the sun sets. There you will find a clue to the next part of your journey. But be warned, the path is not easy. You will need all your strength and wisdom to succeed." Lara felt a surge of determination. They had come so far and overcome so much. They couldn't give up now. "We will accept your challenge," she said. The guardian nodded. "Then go. Remember, the sun waits for no one." Lara, Tom, and Carlos started up the path. It was steep and rocky. They had to climb over large rocks and through dense bushes. The sun was getting lower in the sky, and they knew they didn't have much time. As they climbed, Lara thought about the guardian's words. This challenge was not just about strength. It was also about being smart and working together. They helped each other up the difficult parts of the path. When one of them got tired, the others encouraged them to keep going. They were a team, and they were strong together. The sun was now close to the horizon, its orange light casting long shadows. Lara looked up and saw the top of the hill. They were almost there. With one last effort, they reached the top. The view was beautiful, with the jungle stretching out below them. But there was no time to rest. The sun was almost down. They quickly looked around and found a stone with more symbols on it. It was the clue they needed. Just as the sun set, they took a picture of the stone with its symbols. They had passed the guardian's challenge. Lara felt proud and happy. They had proven themselves worthy. Now they were one step closer to finding the treasure. Having reached the top of the hill just as the sun set, Lara, Tom, and Carlos were catching their breath when the guardian appeared again. He seemed to come out of nowhere, his figure emerging from the shadows as the day turned to dusk. "You have shown strength and determination," the guardian said, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet of the evening. But to truly prove your worth, you must now solve a riddle. Lara's heart raced with excitement and a bit of nervousness. She had always liked riddles, but she had never had to solve one in such a mysterious situation. The guardian spoke slowly, his words clear and deliberate. I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I? Lara, Tom, and Carlos thought about the riddle. It was a tough one. They looked at each other, each trying to think of the answer. Lara closed her eyes, focusing on the words of the riddle. Not alive, but grows. Needs air, but water kills it, she repeated to herself. Then something clicked in her mind. She had read about this in one of her books. She opened her eyes and said confidently, the answer is fire. Fire grows, but is not alive. It needs air to burn, but water can put it out. There was a moment of silence as the guardian looked at Lara, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. You've answered correctly. You have shown wisdom and understanding. You may pass. Lara felt a rush of relief and happiness. She had solved the riddle. Tom and Carlos smiled at her, proud and impressed. The guardian stepped aside, revealing a path that led down the other side of the hill. Go now, he said. Continue your journey and seek the treasure you desire. Before they left, Lara turned to the guardian. Thank you for your challenges. They have made us stronger and smarter. The guardian simply nodded, and then, as mysteriously as he had appeared, he vanished into the fading light. Lara, Tom, and Carlos started down the path. The sun had set, and the jungle was getting dark, but they felt energized and ready for whatever came next. They had overcome physical and mental challenges, proving themselves worthy of their quest. As they walked, Lara thought about the riddle and the guardian. This adventure was more than just a search for treasure. It was a journey of growth and learning. She felt grateful for every challenge and every lesson. The path ahead was dark, but they had flashlights, and more importantly, they had each other. Together, they would face whatever the jungle had in store for them. Chapter 10. The Hidden City. Lara, Tom, and Carlos continued their journey through the jungle, guided by the light of their flashlights. The night was dark, and the sounds of the jungle were all around them. They were tired but excited. The clue they had found at the top of the hill was leading them closer to the treasure. After walking for what seemed like hours, the first light of dawn began to break through the trees. As the jungle around them slowly lit up, they came upon a clearing. In front of them, covered by vines and hidden by the tall trees, were the ruins of an ancient city. It was the lost city they had been searching for. Look, Lara exclaimed, pointing ahead. The city is here, just like the legend said. They walked towards the city. As they moved through the tall grass, they saw old stone buildings and broken walls. Trees and plants had grown over and around them, but the city was still beautiful. This is amazing, Tom said, looking around in awe. The city was old and forgotten, but it still felt alive. Carlos nodded in agreement. We have found something very special. They walked through the city, exploring the ancient ruins. Lara noticed a path leading up to a tall building. Let's go up there, she suggested, pointing to the building. They climbed up the old stone steps, moving carefully. The steps were broken in some places, but they managed to climb up safely. When they reached the top, they looked out over the city. From here, they could see everything. The city was bigger than they had thought. It was a maze of buildings, streets, and squares, all hidden by the jungle. Lara felt a sense of wonder. They were standing in a place that had been lost for centuries. She thought about the people who had lived here and how the city had been forgotten by the world. Then Tom pointed to a building in the distance. "Look over there," he said. "That building looks different. It might be important." Lara looked at where Tom was pointing. The building was taller than the others and had a different shape. "Let's go there," she said. "It might be where the treasure is." They went down the steps and walked through the city towards the building. As they moved, Lara thought about their journey. They had faced many challenges and had come so far. Now they were about to find the treasure they had been searching for. They reached the building and found a door. It was old and made of wood. Lara pushed it open, and they went inside. The inside of the building was dark, but their flashlights showed the way. They found themselves in a large room. The walls were covered in paintings and symbols. "This is it," Lara said, feeling excited. "The treasure must be here." They started to explore the room, looking for any signs of the treasure. Lara felt like her heart was beating faster. They were so close now. Inside the ancient building, Lara, Tom, and Carlos used their flashlights to explore. The room was big and full of old things, pots, statues, and jewelry. But there was one thing that caught Lara's eye. It was a small box made of stone sitting on a pedestal in the center of the room. "This must be it," Lara said, walking towards the box. Her heart was beating fast with excitement. She reached out and carefully opened the box. Inside there was a beautiful golden necklace with a bright blue stone. It shone in the light of their flashlights. "The treasure," she exclaimed. Tom and Carlos came closer to look. "It's amazing," Tom said. "We really found it." Carlos smiled. "Yes, you did it. You found the treasure of the lost city." Lara picked up the necklace. It felt heavy and cold in her hands. She realized that this was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a part of history, a connection to the past. As they stood there, looking at the treasure, Lara thought about their journey. They had faced many challenges and had worked together to overcome them. She had learned so much and had grown braver and stronger. She looked at Tom and Carlos. "This treasure is beautiful, but I've learned something important," she said. "The real treasure is not just this necklace. It's the adventure we had, the things we learned, and the friendship we shared." Tom nodded. "You're right, Lara. This journey was amazing. We did things we never thought we could." Carlos agreed. "The treasure is a great find, but the journey to get here was the real adventure." They decided to take the necklace with them, but to leave the rest of the things in the room. These were a part of the city's history and belonged there. As they walked out of the building, Lara felt proud and happy. They had found the lost city and its treasure. But more importantly, she had discovered the true value of their journey. They made their way back through the city and into the jungle. As they walked, Lara thought about the future. She wanted to go on more adventures, to explore and learn new things. The sun was rising and the jungle was waking up. The air was fresh and the birds were singing. It was a new day, and Lara felt ready for whatever came next. She had found a treasure, but she had also found something more important, a love for adventure and a desire to discover the world's mysteries. Lara's journey had ended, but her adventures were just beginning.